We should not control the player. That's the core idea back then, and it still is at Avalanche. We set the goal for the player, and they can achieve it in whatever way they can imagine with the tools that we provide inside the game. I think that's the strength of Avalanche back then, and I still think it's the strength of Avalanche.
Hi, welcome back to Game Brain. My name's Don. Magnus Nedfors was principal designer on Avalanche Studios' debut title, 2006's Just Cause. He then served as game director on Just Cause 2. Recently, I spoke with Magnus about how the franchise's central mechanic, the grappling hook, came into existence, and how the team later perfected the grapple in Just Cause 2. Had you worked on an open world before? Was that something that was new to you as a designer?
It was new in like a professional way. I always liked open world games, even though back then there wasn't that many around. But I was playing a game earlier on that was called Sid Meier's Pirate. It's one of my favorite times over all time. That has an open world feel to it. As I was involved in game making, I kind of wanted to make something like that. Just Cause was like the ideas for Just Cause was similar, like the player could do whatever he wanted. And it was my first open world game. It was our first, everybody of us.
And was Rico Rodriguez ever supposed to be a pirate, or did that not come about?
Actually, the first crazy concept drawings, he could be the pirate.
I understand the grappling hook was originally a project one of Just Cause's developers was working on in a lunch break. Is that correct?
Well, a little bit more than a lunch break. It was a loose idea. It was not like from the beginning stated that this is one of the cooler things, but it was a idea that spurred from a couple of guys during the development. In Just Cause 1, we didn't realize its potential. We thought it's like, hey, great idea. I can hook this onto cars and I can parasail behind cars and so on. It was great fun. It's hard to define exactly how things comes up. So I actually don't remember at which exact moment the idea popped up first. It just grew on us as somebody had thrown out the idea for it and made a little prototype for it. It was in the middle of development and so on. So we realized it's fun. It's a fun toy. We managed to get it into the game in a good way. We didn't develop it very much because we have so much else to do to just get the game finished and so on during game one. Sometimes it's frustrating to get an idea in the middle of things because it can change so many things. And as a professional, you can't really change your whole production line just because you've got a great idea. Then we got the opportunity to develop it further as we wanted, so we weren't that sad.
How did the idea of the grappling hook evolve in Just Cause 1 from when you first had the ideas to how it's presented now in the final game?
The idea was from the beginning to glide around and have something that propelled you while you were in the parachute. And that's pretty much what we were able to do with it in Just Cause 1. I think I remember it was hard to get the actual the wire rendered in the game. I remember that was a little bit tricky. Like just getting the, how do you call that? The slack in the line was problematic.
Obviously, you said that the whole idea of the grappling hook was there to facilitate the parachute, which is Rico being in the air.
Yep.
From a design standpoint, helping develop that grappling hook, was that sort of the team realizing that the game was always at its funnest when you were in the air, when there was like a high-flying quality to it?
Yeah, it was something that we found really interesting. Like the parachute was a lot of fun and so on, but we wanted a tool to utilize that more.
You're now with Just Cause 2 in the role of game director. What was your vision for a sequel to Just Cause? What kind of ideas did you immediately have in terms of what that sequel might look like?
We had a lot of different ideas based on the first game. We had the opportunity to go more or less, if I remember correctly, straight from 1 to 2. So we had a good core team that had some ideas. The grappling hook was one of them, of course. We still wanted a big open world, of course. We realized that we like to do explosions and we do explosions good. So we wanted to push that even further. So that's nice looking graphical explosions, which is kind of like behind the whole destroy everything feeling in Just Cause 2.
What was the one thing, do you think, the team collectively learnt from Just Cause 1 that was directly translated to the development of Just Cause 2?
Well, many things, I think, but I think the important thing that has been true throughout Avalanche history until this day is we should not control the player. That's the core idea back then, and it still is at Avalanche. Of course, you can do scripted sequences where we need to have a little bit more control, but to break the classical mold of now you do this, now you pull this lever, now you go over here and destroy this thing, now you jump over this fence and so on in a super linear controlled fashion. We realized that why should we always do that? We set the goal for the player and they can achieve it in whatever way they can imagine with the tools that we provide inside a game. I think that's the strength of Avalanche back then, and I still think it's the strength of Avalanche.
And freedom is so paramount to the Just Cause series, and the grappling hook is really in the center of that, giving players so much mobility and experimentation as well. How did your plans for the grappling hook in Just Cause 2 change over time and the design evolve?
How did it change over time? I think many of the ideas came as we developed another idea, like going from propulsion of yourself to propulsion of other objects. That idea is how tethering came about. So if I connected one end to one thing and another end to another thing, and they were physicalized in some way, they should affect each other. Those kind of things, they follow on each other. The way we make games at Avalanche is that everything or most things are very systemic, and those rules make things happen that we can't imagine before we see them. Well, the whole series of Just Cause, I think, is just playing with our toys as designers and see, we should make more of this, or if we change this in this way. We realize things as we go. It's pretty chaotic, and strict producers kind of find it very frustrating with us creatives in the beginning of the games, because we can't really tell them exactly what we're doing. That's sometimes really bad, but it's also a strength. The hard thing is to find the breaking point where you need to go over from being creative and just find the fun in a playful way.
And with the grappling hook in Just Cause 2, when did you know that it was time to stop?
Well, that's a tough question. I don't think we ever did, because we continue to develop it as we go. I remember one of the last features that we added to it, or last idea we made work, was we had those tubes that you use when you weld with gas in them. Like if you shut them so they just didn't explode, but they started to propel and fly around in the world on a very random so, and that was super fun to connect that to two things, like explosive barrels to one of those, shoot one of them and they fly off and create havoc around in the world. So I think that was one of the last ideas that we realized this is really cool, so we developed that. Then we wrapped everything together, but the grappling hook was kind of under constant development during the whole project. But the grappling hook is so dynamic, so it has been a very dynamic thing to evolve and develop over the years. I'm super happy with where it's gone. 4 is the first Just Cause game that I hardly been involved in at all, and I'm super happy to see where they have taken it. It's a thing that is existing in games now. It's not just in Just Cause any longer. So I think that's one of my and the Just Cause 1 team's biggest achievements. The people who were involved in popularizing the grappling hook, and see how it's taken off to other games and so on.
And you said that obviously grappling hooks have become really popular with other games in the last few years. Are there any grappling hooks in particular that you like in video games, or that have influenced your design even?
As you know, I'm working with Rage 2 now. That's made by Bethesda, and it has always been one of my favorite developers. And when I saw that they incorporated a grappling hook in their game, I kind of got a bit proud as well. It looks really fun and so on. It's not used in the same way as in Just Cause at all. They utilize the grappling hook to either move the monsters towards you or you towards the monsters in a great way to strengthen their type of gameplay in a really, really interesting way.
I think in Doom it's a meat hook, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. What did designing the grappling hook in the Just Cause series teach you about game design? Was there anything in particular you learned from your time with the grappling hook?
To be open-minded, I think. Don't stress. We might have actually failed if we had more time with it in Just Cause 1. So I think we had the opportunity to evolve it over time in a good way. That's a learning I have done together with the grappling hook, I would say. Keep your ideas, don't mash them badly into one game, dwell on them for a while and implement them when you have the correct amount of time, because unique ideas like that should be taken care of. So patience.
Great. No worries. Thank you so much, Magnus. I'll let you go.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See ya.
See you. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching my interview with Magnus Nedfors. Feel free to like and or share this video if you enjoyed it. And while you're here, why not subscribe to stay tuned for future content? I've got another interview with Just Cause 4 game director Francesco Ansolini on the way very soon. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.